For most Black Americans, especially those in the South, the front porch isn't just part of the entry into the house. It is the place we enter community. It's not just the comfort or safety we experience there, but it's where we do some people watching and good reflection. On the front porch is where we tell the truth with a little sweetener and an awesome time along the way. We take what we learn and we act. On this episode, we discuss all things related to youth, education, community, and the politics of people.
Hey, good people. It is KaCey here, and welcome to another episode of On the Front Porch. Now, clearly, we're not on a porch, but metaphorically, we know, especially in the South, for our community, the porch is that safe space. It either is that place where your grandmother and your elders were vetting people before they let them into your home. And sometimes it was the place where you were reminded of who you are before you leave your home to go into the world. And so on this virtual front porch, this is a safe space for conversation that is impactful to who we are as Black Americans, particularly those of us who are of Christian faith, those of us who love being part of the South and understanding what all those things mean for us. So tonight, I'm really, really excited to have a guest on tonight's show as he helps us uncover and discuss some of those other pieces that are necessary to moving our community forward. So the last thing you probably should know about these conversations is that this is part of a 4-part series as it relates to understanding the sociological and the theological concepts as it relates to what do we need to do to rebuild our community and make sure that we're prospering in our total being. So welcome, Blue. I'm going to give you a moment to be able to share with the folks who you are, and then we're going to dive right on in.
Well, yes, my nickname is Blue because I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Real name is Ricardo Allen, born in Winona, Mississippi, raised in Clarksville, Tennessee. I have a bachelor's degree in mass communications, radio, TV from Mississippi Valley State University, where I was all conference in football, senior class president, radio student of the year on two occasions. And I actually almost had a double major in history. So I love the past to know where we're going for the future. And one son, mother, and a brother is my immediate family.
Nice. That history almost double major might come into play tonight. So I won't, I don't know. I might have to have you dig deep in your bag. We'll see.
Come on.
Come on. Okay, cool. All right. So I want to start with a question I've been asking people lately. Like, where are our leaders, right? And I know that that's kind of like a double-edged sword because some people don't think that we need a defined leader in our community anymore, but we do need leaders. And so my question, just to kind of kickstart this conversation is, do we have leaders? And if so, where are they?
Well, they're in the church. They're in the church. They're at work. We don't have, before my time, there were definitive leaders of John Lewis, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. We knew those were leaders. There was no question. They were out front. You can see them leading from the front. And then some of the younger men became older men with them, Jesse Jackson, John Lewis, and many others, Stoker Carlisle, all those civil rights leaders. And then but here's the major difference. Those leaders didn't have financial influence. They had community influence. They had They weren't rich. They were not wealthy. If you were to check their bank account, you would not be impressed by any means. So now more people are more worried about what's in their bank account and their personal self versus helping their community. So they're still there. The church that I attend, I'm 43. The members of the church that are active are 60 and 70 years old. And there's not many that are my age or younger that are participating in the church. They're in the streets, they're at the club, they're out, doing things that young people do instead of, in my time, we would go do whatever we're going to do, and then we would make sure we're at church on Sunday. I just said, we'll just omit that. So the leaders are getting older, and the next round is not stepping up. And there's no young 25-year-old, they're like, oh my God, he's impressive, he got next. They're not there. So now it's time for the people in my generation, Gen X, to step up. And we have to do that because we keep telling ourselves that 40 is the new 30 or 40 is the new 20, when 40 is 40. The number of years you've been on earth. Stop lying to yourself saying that, oh, I still have more time, because unfortunately, the life expectancy has not changed by 30 years. It's not changed by 10 years. It's went up 4 or 5, but it's not went up to 20 or 30 that people are acting like. Yes, we look younger, we're more vibrant to a certain age, and then unfortunately we still fall off after a certain age.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. And I love actually how you went straight to church being one of our leaders, or where our leaders are embedded. And it is true, like we don't have the same platform as we had before, where certain people are elevated. There's one particular pastor that I follow a lot in like social justice work. His name is William Barber, and he's out of North Carolina. And I love him because for me, he is like the true definition of a prophet, right? Prophet is not there to promise you all of your cars and all of your houses and that you're going to be a millionaire, but is what will come if you don't do what God has instructed you to do. And a lot of times people don't want to hear leadership come from the standpoint of being authoritative, making it a fact versus offering something to someone. And I bring that up because one of the things that I know about you and getting to know you and kind of following the work that you do is that you are very big on order, on structure, as it relates to the family unit, right? And so even when I think about leadership in church, how do you think that translates to our families and our families having that order and that structure that we are accustomed to from our parents and our grandparents and our elders? Do we see that in mass now in our like current community, or are folks just like doing whatever it is that they want to do?
They're doing what they want to do. The family structure is totally falling apart. It has it's been disassembling for years, and now it's almost at full. It's not possible to. We have to basically do a full reset because women want to have children, but they don't want the men to be a part of the household. Mm-hmm. And that help make the babies, they're not able to or not allowed to participate in the rearing of the children. The men, you have to have the yin and yang of the 2-parent household of mother and father, so the dad can bring the discipline and the structure, the mother can bring the nurturing, caring, and just the love. Like my dad was there in my household. He loved me based on the way he showed me he loved me, but he didn't say, I love you every day. Mm-hmm. My mom every day.
Yeah.
Kid, I wasn't really worried about because I saw both of them all the time. So I'm like, okay, well, he went to work and she went to work. They came back. I had a nice Christmas, had a nice Thanksgiving. I'm not worried about any clothes or shoes. Mm-hmm. And my stuff is nice. Our TV's big. Our house is not that small. Okay, well, something's going okay. Compared, you go to somebody else's house and you see what they have and don't have versus what you have. Well, my parents were doing all right. Both of them went to work every day. Mm-hmm. But now, a lot of people, men and women, they're single parent households that are men. They say, "Hey, I don't need my other half," but child needs your other half. The child needs the full prepared table that both parents offer together, and that's one of the things I talk about: a prepared table. Because not necessarily about this, but who's bringing what to the table? No, the table is both people together. Mm-hmm. Both the parents make a prepared table so you can eat and drink together. If one person's doing it, something's going to be missing because you're missing the person. that provides the thing that you don't provide. If you only have a dad, he's only going to provide structure and discipline. He's not going to be that loving, nurturing person that you want. And if a mother has to do it, she's not going to be as disciplined. She's going to be try to be more nurturing and mothering and loving and caring. So it takes both. It's a consistent thing. Yes, people have been successful, but you want to talk in broad strokes. Does the average single parent household, that child reared, are they as successful as the two-parent household of that child? Does that two-parent household child have a better chance of being successful in life? Also, do they have a better experience as a child in life?
No, I mean, I agree with you. You know, even in the work that I do, folks are usually, I don't know if I want to use the word impressed, but they are in awe of what I can accomplish. But I'm very intentional to make sure that the other folks who help me are men, right? Because I work with a lot of boys. And I can be firm when I need to, right? I can put my foot down. Just the other day, you know, I had to yoke one of them up. But it's not the same when it comes from Miss KaCey as it does from a grown man, right? Telling another young man who's maturing, what does it mean to show up and be accountable and be respectful? I can't teach you that as a man, right? I'm a woman. I can share with you the benefit that you get when you do those things, right? And how the nurturing aspect of it makes you well-rounded. But there's just some things I cannot give to him because I'm not a man, right? And so that's why it's important to have that balance. And I mean, I think you summed it up beautifully. And I tell people all the time that even if, you know, there was this meme I saw, it was a video, and it was a woman who admitted that she had not done the best job raising her children because she felt like she had to be both mama and daddy. And she came to the realization that no, it was never my job to be mama and daddy, even if that man walked away. Her job was to find other men that could provide that discipline, that, you know, being that role model for her sons. But she was never supposed to fill that masculine role, even though she was put in a position to have to do the heavy lifting of the day-to-day rearing. And I just thought that was unique because we don't ever talk about that side of it, right? Either you have people on one side that point fingers like, oh, it's all the men's fault because they're not there, or the women push the men away, or the government don't want Black families to be together. You have all of these things that people can point to, but at the end of the day, that child still needs that balance. And
Right.
we still have to make sure they find it, because then if they don't have that balance, you have a lot of young people like the ones I work with who don't know themselves because they don't know the other part of them, and no one's ever unlocked that for them. So I have a question. I have a history question for you.
Okay.
Can you think of a point in history that kind of was the demarcation for us of like, okay, this is where the tide began to turn? And I'm going to caution you because a lot of people will answer, it's like, oh, well, slavery. Barring slavery, we know that we're still feeling effects of family units and breakdowns and all of that. Outside of the time in which Blacks were enslaved, is there another point in time where we missed the mark? Like the wool was being pulled over our eyes, or things were happening and we were like, had we responded differently, maybe our families would have been more intact.
When you say we, are you saying the Black people would have responded differently? Because if you wouldn't have gave me that line of demarcation, I would have said Reconstruction. Because that's Reconstruction. Let's give the background what I'm talking about. Reconstruction was when the North won the Civil War in 1865, and then they brought Union troops in to enforce the new freed slaves, right? So they were in place for a few years. And in this time, that's when you hear about all those Black senators, congressmen, governors, all that stuff that were Black. Well, they pulled them out after a couple of years because all these thousands and thousands of Union soldiers were not at home. They're like, well, I'm going to go back home to mama. And when they did, it fell apart. That's when KKK came around. That's when Jim Crow first started. So that's when it fell apart. So if you take away that, because some people say, well, Reconstruction was just a flash in the pan, and it gave us a quick opportunity to see what life would be like 100 years later, basically. And then it back to now, recently had a conversation about indentured servitude, AKA sharecropping, which is the worst version of, we're just, 2 steps away from slavery with sharecropping and how they did it. And I'm gonna quickly mention restitution, because they talk about saying, hey, reparations. I'm sorry, they talk about, but the one reparation that they really need to work on was, if the name of Spike Lee's company, 40 Acres and a Mule. There were allotted people who received the actual 40 acres and a mule. They received South of North Carolina. They received it, and it was taken back when the North was pulled out. People don't talk about that. So I would say, who needs it? Everybody on that short list that got 40 acres and a mule. Give them the equivalent of what 40 acres now in that area, and a car and a tractor, because a mule was equivalent to a tractor, and a nice John Deere tractor, and 40 acres, give them that money, because that was actually taken. Because in all other versions of that the U.S. government has given back, it's when they've taken something for somebody that they had, they lost it, and they knew they could recoup it, i.e. People of Japanese descent after World War II. Please don't be mad at anybody, but the loss of what the Nazis did to the Jews, but that didn't happen in America, but they still get appreciation for it. So the next one I would say is after the Great Depression, because talk about the Great Depression and they talk about how bad it was for the Northerners and, the bread lines and all those things. So if they that don't look like us had it bad, the people who look like us had it twice as bad, but we stuck together. And then as we came out of that and we went into World War II, because that's basically what took us out of the Great Depression. I have this theory that no matter what, if something goes wrong, we go to war, the legislation will create funds out of the air, poof, then they'll put it into America. Every time we have an issue with the dollar, every time we have an issue with too long of a depression, Great Depression, or a recession, we go to war, that fixes it. Just look at over the years. Every couple of years, we go to war. I know hopefully I'm not getting too derailed off of, but when we came back from World War II, they didn't really want us to fight. They really wanted us, the black community, to be the cooks, to be janitors, whatever in the war. And that's why I can't remember his name, unfortunately. The black man who was in Pearl Harbor that actually used the gun and helped save lives, he was killed because no other black man on all those boats was able to save lives because they were just cooks or they were just janitors or stuff like that. They weren't no officers. There were no officers, and there was no black unit, all black unit in Pearl Harbor at that time. So after we came back from the war, and it happens after every war, we go over there, we're mixing and mingling, and we have a sense of equality. And then we come back to where we're from, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana. And then we face the reality that they still don't respect us. And we just died in lives because we're American. And they don't respect. But I think that once we got back and they start issuing the Montgomery GI Bill, I think that happened in the late 50s, early 60s. We should have taken advantage every time to go get education. We should educate ourselves. I understand people are saying, hey, we should go get a skill or trade. Okay, but guess what? If you only have a skill or trade, they're not going to let you lead. So there's the intellectual, who is smart enough, who will read enough, who will take the time to be patient enough. There's 2 or 3 Jackie Robinsons that have not broken into a field that have the patience, have the fortitude to break into a field and lead by example. Be that man in the front that'll have to take those hits, have to take that disrespect to be able to open the doors for the rest. And we need more men. We need more Jackie Robinsons. Jackie Robinson was not the best baseball player, but he had the mental fortitude. He had the discretion. He was deliberate, and he was disciplined. You have to need more of that, even now. Even now, to stop saying, "Hey, I'm going to do it the way I want to." Figure out what the status quo is. Figure out how to get in and play the game. Then, after you're successful, then bring the others on. But don't say, "I'm going to do it how I want to," and then wonder why it didn't work. And we have a lot of that. I'm going to do it how I want to. You're not going to disrespect me. No, that's not how you get in. That's not how you. That's not how you give opportunity to others that look like you. Because if you come in and say, "I'm going to do it like I want to," the next one who looks like you, they're not going to give them an opportunity. And then you're going to wonder why. And then say, "You can't discriminate me. You can't." Oh, yes, they can.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. I had a conversation with someone before this, and we were talking about education, right? And we were talking about the skills, the trades, that whole piece of it. And I misquoted the year Horace Mann was alive. I made him older than he was, but he was really around in like the early 1800s. And so Horace Mann, for those who are listening and you're not aware, he's kind of like the father of modern public education. There's even a publishing company around textbooks. If you ever paid attention that closely, some of them are Horace Mann publishers for the textbooks that are in our classrooms. But he is the one who coined the phrase that education is the great equalizer. And so we were talking about how during that time, Horace Mann was not including us, right, in that conversation in 1848. Like, we were not top of his mind when he was talking about using education to equalize the playing field and the opportunities. But we know that over time, we began to pick up those tenets and we pushed our children, to schools, to colleges. And I believe in that. Full disclaimer. So I ran for school board here in Atlanta citywide in 2021. Didn't win. That's fine. It was my very first race. Pushed it to a runoff though. So pretty proud of that. But what I realized was that we need both. Right? We need to push our children to be college ready and to also know how to have a skill or a trade. Not because you need a backup plan, but because skills and trades use different parts of your brain, right? And in order to really have our children think critically, it's how do we help them use both sides of their brain so that they can make wiser decisions. I try not to use the word better for a lot of reasons, but to make wiser decisions. One thing that I learned, and I don't know if you knew this, Blue, is that Sunday school really started as a way to teach those children who were part of sharecropping families how to read, how to write, how to do math, right? To have some understanding of their heritage, their family, their history, because our children were going to school only part of the year because they had to be in the field and they were missing so much. Do you think that there is a responsibility that community has to fill in the gaps for our children, or should that just be the school's responsibility?
No. Education, you should never stop learning no matter how old you are. You should never not have the thirst for more knowledge. The more we know, the better we are. They hide things in books, as they say, but those books are becoming more open as you Google things. Like me, I'm a Google addict. I'm not going to say I'm a Google scholar because I'm still going to read the article that Google said. Because Google just find the article. And they might have a question you have, but if you read the full article or say, hey, it's in this book because there's a bibliography to the question that you have, read that, get all of that information. The 3 R's, even though it's kind of country, reading arithmetic is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You need those. You shouldn't be, as an adult in 2023 or as a child who's above 15, you shouldn't find something that you can't read. You should not be able to handle money, physical money, and add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And you should be able to comprehend to above kindergarten level so that somebody can't stump you and you just, instead of saying, hey, I don't understand, no. And the one thing that I'm discouraged about is the number of people that are my age or close to my age that don't speak the King's English. Mm. I don't want anybody to, there's two things that I really don't like is when you get disqualified because of your appearance and you get disqualified because of your speech, not because you have a Southern drawl or you have a Northern Jersey, New York, whatever, but the words that you use disqualify you or the lack thereof of words. They always say that the words you use will determine your education because if you had the vocabulary, you don't have to use cuss words. So whenever I cuss less. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but if I'm really frustrated, I'm not going to use any cuss words. Just to let you know, I consider myself an intellectual because I want to be able to speak freely. I like using this phrase. I'm going to answer you in a paragraph form versus sentence form so that I answer everything around the question that you asked me, front, side, back. And says a paragraph is for sentences. So I'm going to give everything. So then when I get through talking, you don't have anything to say. But being respectful, being disciplined, being diligent, and being consistent. If you are those things, everyone should want to read more. And then even if you're not good at reading, you should take the time, find a book that you like, find a subject that you like, go to a small place, read out loud. And if you don't like the way that you sound, change it until you do.
Yeah, work on it.
Always be working on your mind. You should work on your mind, your body, your spirit all the time. Work on those things. But if you don't want to be disqualified because of your skin color, then when you open your mouth, they have to qualify you. That's how if you saw me, you're like, oh, well, I don't know. But then you hear me, never mind. How are you, sir? And the reason I dress a certain way consistently is because I'm not going to let my dress disqualify me. The only thing they can say about me is the color of my skin. I can't help that. But everything I can change, my skin color will qualify me because everything else will be qualified.
Yeah, it made me think of two things. When you were talking about when you're upset and angry, you have an intention to not curse because you want to be able to use your words. And I was chuckling a little bit because I tell people all the time that there are two things that my mama and my Aunt Paulette taught me well, is to lay somebody all the way out without ever having to use a curse word. And by the time we get finished, you would have wished I cussed you out, right? Because your brain is moving so fast trying to connect the dots between these words I'm using that you're leaving bewildered and confused. And I feel like I have the upper hand because I told you exactly what I thought about you. Right. I just didn't use words that you are used to, which means that it diffused you because now you don't have a quick comeback because you know how to respond to me when I cuss you out, but you don't know how to respond to me when I call you an imbecile. Right? When I tell you that your comments make no sense and I'm befuddled by them, right? So when I have to explain these things to you, so I like that approach because I use it a lot too. And then the other question I have for you is, what are your thoughts around code switching? Is there a place for it? Not that we all have to do it all the time. You may not think that we should code switch at all. If so, is there a time and a place for that?
Okay, so that is a very good question. I think that the only time you can turn it off is if you know that you're in a relaxed environment and you know that these are your cousins or best friends from before you were educated. and then you relax a little. But you should only turn it down a little bit. Like I mean, instead of being just strict, hard as a rock, I mean, just loosen it up a little bit to you a couple pebbles, but you still you can never turn it off because the Fed's watching. Like you didn't need to act like you always have to be on. And then if you condition yourself a certain way, you won't say I have to code switch because this is now who you are. You're accepted no matter where you go, no matter what your relaxed version of yourself is. Then if you condition yourself to that point, and some people might disagree. Oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to talk that way. I'm not going to. Okay. Well, guess what? You're limiting your ceiling gets closer and closer every time you say you're not going to do something. If you want to be able to do more, then you have to be able to do more. And my one favorite phrase is, don't tell me why you can't, tell me how you can. So tell me how you cannot have a code switch. Tell me how this is who you are. Tell me how you condition and discipline yourself to be this better version of yourself. So no matter where you are, you're getting indoors, you're being accepted, you're being qualified.
No, I get it. I do. There are many instances where, and I see both sides. I see the case where people feel as though, well, you shouldn't have to change how you speak. But it's for me, I look at it the same way. My mother is not going to talk to me the same way in public that she would in private, right? And so it's not about being fake or phony or not being proud of the culture that you come from. Everybody shouldn't be privy to everything. And you also don't want to limit. We have enough to contend with, right? We got enough to fight through. And if that is one thing that we don't have to have used against us, I see the point of, okay, this is where you work on your speech and your diction and your articulation and your vocabulary, right? And your comprehension, so that, to your point around talking in paragraphs, you can't come for me, right? You can't come and try to dismantle my intelligence because I have proven to you that I can handle my own in this regard. So let's now move on to some of the other issues that you may have with me for whatever reason. So I hear you. I hear you on that. So I got one last question, and then, we'll wrap up. But so there's a scripture that I reference a lot in this work that I do. And the scripture is Psalms 34:6, and I'm going to pull it up and read it. And for all these Bible scholars out here, I'm going to give you the translation, because folks like to go back and double check you, as you should. But 34:6. Let me pull it up here. My phone's acting up. Because I don't have scriptures memorized, but I can find them. So it says, this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all of his troubles. Now, I bring this up when I talk about a lot of the work that I do, because a lot of folks say, oh, well, we don't need to focus on the least of these in our community, right? Because God said that the poor, they're always going to be with us. Like, why are we concerned about them if they're always going to be with us? So I did some digging, and what the scripture actually says, as we continue on, because in another verse, it talks about the poor will always have you. Not that the poor will always be here, but the poor will always have you. And so my interpretation of that is that there is some responsibility that we have to those who are the least of these. Now, let me make this disclaimer. I am not talking about people who make poor decisions, and these are now the consequences of their life, right? I'm talking about people who try hand over fist, folks who may be part of generational poverty, And we can debate or discuss that, there should be no need for that because of the access to information. But you only know how to find information if you know what you're looking for, right? So I always lead with this particular question because it really is the crux of the work that I do. Does our community, Black folks in particular, have a responsibility to help those who are the least of these, who don't have as much? And that's going to look different for all of us, right? So I want to start first with do we have a responsibility? And if so, what is our responsibility?
We can only help those who want to be helped. So the first part is for them to admit that they want help. Mm-hmm. And then seek and find those who can help them. And if you find, like, the mentorship, it never ends. If there's somebody who is smarter, faster, stronger, more intelligent, find those people in your life, mm-hmm. or till you're in that circle, and then grow and learn from them. But if you never say that I need help, people in this day and age won't help you. But if you say, hey, I'm not like you, I'm not where you are, I might not have the clothes you have, but I want to learn. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of people will say, okay, well, this is the first step you need to do. This is what you need to start reading here. You need to start saving here. You need to start doing this here. And then come back in 6 weeks or come back in 6 months. But you have to want to speak up and say, I'm looking for an olive branch. And then once you find that person who's willing to give it, they might not be the actual right person. They might only be the person that introduces you to the person that introduces you to the person. But you start somewhere, and you have to look outside of your situation and your circle. And sometimes that means you got to drive 30 or 45 minutes to work to put yourself in a better situation. As we're talking about the Bible is big on sacrifice. If you have not sacrificed, you're not going to change your life. You have to live like no other, as in sacrifice, give up, live less than, not have as much, not be able to flaunt, be humble in order to be able to live like no other, be able to have more than, and be in a situation where you then can pay it forward by paying it back.
No, I love it. I know I said that was my last question. This really is my last question, because I do enjoy listening to your conversations, and we'll let the people know how they can find you and be a part of that as well. But you talk a lot about kind of the reunification of Black families, right? Can you just speak just really quickly about why it's important for Black men and Black women to ensure that our family structure is strong? Like, why is that a passion of yours? And then how does it benefit the whole? How does it benefit all of us when our families can be reunified, or there's an intention to ensure that we continue to create Black families?
There's no better version of life than having two good parents who love their children. The man's going to bring something different to the table than a woman, but again, I said before, those children have the best version. Those children are the most successful. Those children have the best childhoods. And you have the resources of two parents, whether they're both working or one is staying at home. But you have to have both. There's times where somebody passed away early for unforeseen issues. Not talking about those, you can't help that. But for the majority, you want both parents in to help raise the children. In order to raise a man, you need a man. And there's nothing like that fatherly voice saying, sit down. When the mama told him to sit down 5 times and he's still crying, daddy comes say, sit down half the time, not even the full time. Like I would say, my father, when I was being raised, he told me, he said, listen, if I give you an order or an instruction, before I get to the period of the directive that I give you, you need to be doing that action or in the process of doing that action. And some people say, man, that might be harsh, but no, here's an example. Go sweep the kitchen, okay? So by the time he gets to the T in kitchen, I should be up out of my seat, walking towards the kitchen. No exceptions, no huffing, no puffing, no words, no eye roll, no anything. So then now that I'm this age, I kind of expect the same thing. Yeah. Instruction, I want it done immediately. I don't want to, let me negotiate with you. Let's talk about this. No, Go sweep the kitchen. That's just that. And it doesn't have to be a yelling. It's not about raising your voice. If you make sure the words that you use count, you don't have to use them over and over. You only have to say, because I've been told, well, you didn't raise your voice, you didn't yell at me. I don't.
Yeah.
That makes it miss the point. If you say it strong enough the first time, you don't have to keep repeating it. And then I've actually heard people say, well, you should have told me twice. Well, I want to tell you twice. Now that we're talking about it, you know to listen the first time now, don't you? So the dynamic helps. I mean, because it's one thing when, like, if you're a kid, you're 11, 12, 13, and you were outside playing, and you come in the house, and, you know, dad's working on the yard, he's doing something, working on the car, mom's cooking, and then, you know, you're like, oh, mom and dad here, it's kind of great. And you're smiling as a kid, especially if you hadn't done anything wrong. You did your homework. I mean, back in my day, I started with Nintendo, so I didn't have the Xbox and all the other stuff. So it wasn't that big of a deal to stay in and game all day. But it was go outside, street light. Back in, I remember one time I tried to negotiate the street light. I was like, yeah, but the other one isn't on yet, but the one by the house did. That's not my fault, Dad. He said, do you see this? Yes, I do. Okay. Well, you know what's going to happen.
So, you were testing the boundaries. You were
trying to negotiate, but I realized he wasn't a lawyer, and neither was I.
Well, we know who won that battle.
Of course.
Oh my gosh, I could talk to you for a very long time about a lot of things, but thank you for joining me in conversation today. And to all of you who are listening or viewing this, definitely check out some of the other episodes. All last season was a lot. I know that I kind of unleashed on folks. This season, we're doing something just a little bit different. And I hope that you have gained something from it. If so, let us know in the comments. And if there's more that you'd like to hear about these topics, let us know that too. So, Blue, I'm going to let you have the last word. I want you to tell people how they can follow you, how they can support you, what you have going on. What do the people need to know?
Well, you can find me mainly on IG, Unfiltered Polo Blue. There's no E on the blue, Unfiltered Polo Blue. Buy a badge, follow, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. I'm on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday nights, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. And I pop up on lives. I'm going to start working on speaking engagements here shortly, hopefully by the summer, and doing more things like this going forward. And again, that's Unfiltered Polo Blue on IG, no E on the blue.
Awesome. And we're going to tag all of his stuff in the caption, in the descriptions, so that you know exactly where to follow him, make it super easy for you. But again, I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you for all that you shared with us. And we'll see you next time, folks.